Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us um, for tonight's webinar. The Drought Monitoring Webinar Series is a collaborative effort with our guest speakers, the Drought Learning Network, the Navajo Sustainable Agriculture Project, and the Southwest Climate Hub. We will be providing a webinar each week, as all of you know, until next week, July 12th. So before we begin, I'm going to go ahead and go over some webinar logistics. As these webinars will be recorded and posted onto our website, YouTube channels, and social media accounts. You may enter your questions in the chat box during the presentation. After the presentation is over, we will go ahead and have a Q&A session. At that time, you can raise your hand to ask your questions, or you can unmute yourself. We will also have a survey poll at the end. If you guys can get that filled out, that'd be great. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our program, the Navajo Sustainable Agriculture Project. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Jessie Jim, and I am the field coordinator for the Navajo Sustainable Agriculture Project, also known as the NSA project. NSA is a New Mexico Cooperative Extension initiative delivered in collaboration with the Diné College Land Grant Office and Community Outreach and Patient Empowerment, also known as COPE program. The NSA project is funded by USDA's Outreach and Assistance for Socially Disadvantaged Farmers and Ranchers and Veteran Farmers and Ranchers program. The goals of the NSA project are to improve the operation, profitability, and sustainability of socially disadvantaged Navajo farmers and ranchers and veteran farmers and ranchers. We are also increasing our Navajo farmer and ranchers' knowledge to access of available programs and technical assistance provided by USDA programs such as NRCS, FSA, Rural Development, and Risk Management Agencies, and other programs that are alike. Lastly, we are increasing the local production and consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy foods by Navajo families and individuals through our gardening programs. Our team includes our project director, Dr. Michael Patrick, our field specialist, Kelly Lantana, and myself. We invite you all to visit our NSA webpage at nsaproject.nmsu.edu. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to Helena, our partner, to introduce her program. So go ahead, Helena.
Hi, everyone. Yate. I'm Helena Deswood. I'm the tribal coordinator for the Southwest Climate Hub. The Climate Hub's like USDA research and program agencies in their regional delivery of tools and information to ag producers and professionals. We are located at the Jornada Experimental Range in Las Cruces, New Mexico. The Drought Learning Network is a peer-to-peer knowledge exchange between climate service providers and resource managers. The main goal of Drought Learning Network is to gather and share lessons learned from drought events to improve responses to future drought. We currently have 5 working groups. If you're interested, let me know. They are Indigenous collaborations, monitoring and impacts reporting, drought in ag, sharing management practices, and projections to people. Back over to you, Jessie.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And Julie, if you can put your slide up, and in the meantime, I'll go ahead and introduce Julie. All right, while that's going on, I'm going to introduce our presenter tonight, Julie Elliott. Grew up riding a horse on a small ranch in eastern Colorado. Now she works as a rangeland management specialist with the Natural Resource Conservation Service. Julie cares deeply about rangelands. In particular, she wants to help ranchers prepare their range for drought. This includes what happens on the range during and after drought. Julie is currently on a special detail to the Northern Plains Climate Hub. Her focus has been on sharing information about grass calves and drought. So that's our speaker for this evening. Julie, thank you, and I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you also for inviting GrassCast to be part of this informative series. I've been able to attend the last 2 sessions, so have really enjoyed it and have picked up some new pieces of information as well. So tonight I'm going to visit with you about GrassCast and how it can help you anticipate drought on rangelands. GrassCast is made possible through the Northern Plains Climate Hub through a collaboration of USDA, or the U.S. Department of Agriculture, several universities, and the National Drought Mitigation Center. Just in case you're not familiar with Climate Hubs, although Climate Hub, the Southwest Climate Hub is part of this series, the hubs were created in 2014 to help support resilient working landscapes and agriculture production in the face of this increasing weather variability and changes that are happening. There's a network of 10 hubs across the country. We partner with several agencies, including the USDA, Cooperative Extension, numerous universities, the U.S. Department of Interior Climate Science Centers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or you probably might know them better as NOAA, and several tribal organizations. If you'd like to just investigate Climate Hubs, why I have the general website up there at the top. And there's also access to the newsletters for all the different Climate Hubs. So if you want to see what the Caribbean Hub is up to, why you can go to that link and find the Caribbean Hub newsletter. For relevant for this group, why there's the Southwest Climate Hub, and I have a link there for their podcasts, webinars, and videos. And I didn't know if maybe there might be some folks from the Southern Plains on as well. So I included their link for you there at the bottom of the page. Grass growth is a complex process that hinges on getting the right amount of moisture at the right time. But we all know weather forecasting is challenging, especially for rainfall. So no one knows for sure how much moisture we're going to get until the growing season's over. But in the meantime, if signs of drought start to emerge, there can be costly consequences for waiting too long to reduce livestock forage demand in the hopes that the grass will grow. Cattle markets can fall, hay markets can rise, and rangelands can be damaged in ways that last for years or even decades. This delayed action has negative effects on the rangelands, as well as the animals, the livelihoods, and the culture of the people living there. Therefore, GrassCast was created to try to help us see what grass production might be lying ahead in the coming growing season. GrassCast works by taking the soils information, combining that with the plant communities growing on those soils, and the past weather data, squashes it all together to create a current soil water profile. It then adds in future possible temperature and precipitation scenarios to create a total production prediction. But forecasts aren't always correct, as we all know. So GrassCast uses 3 possible weather scenarios instead. What if rainfall is above normal? How much grass production might we expect in that case? What if it's near normal? If we could just see a normal year, what is near normal production? And what if the spigot shuts off, as you all experienced so soundly this spring, and we have below normal precipitation? How much grass production might we expect in that case? And presto, we have GrassCast maps. Now, there are a lot of colors here, and it can seem pretty darn overwhelming. So don't panic or shut down on me. I will take it all apart and walk you through understanding these maps so they're meaningful. For now, let's just suffice it to say the maps are telling us, based on the observed weather to date, plus future weather scenarios, we expect grassland productivity in your area to be some percent higher or lower than your area's 36-year average. Now, Arizona and New Mexico, you're really unique in that you have 2 separate green up events. One is in the spring. It's driven by precipitation and temperatures from January to May, but because things don't really get going until later, we create the maps running April and May. Then You have a summer growing season. It starts in June and it runs on the summer precipitation and temperatures from June through August. We create the maps from June to the 1st of September, representing that end of the season totality. So let's take a look at the maps. This is the spring map from May 3rd. Now, the first thing some of you on this call might notice that there's no GrassCast map for you if you're in Southwest Colorado or Southeast Utah. And on the spring maps, there's a big gray hole in Northeast, Northern Arizona, and Northwest New Mexico. Southwest Colorado and Southeast Utah, yeah, we know that the soils and the vegetation and the climate weather information or climate weather patterns don't just hard change at the state line, but we also don't have the resources to figure out where that change occurs. So we just stop the forecast at the state lines. Northeast Arizona and Northwest New Mexico, we discovered last year that the statistical relationships between precipitation, the plant water use, and the resulting plant growth are just really too poor in the spring to be making a forecast with any acceptable level of confidence. It's like flipping a coin. We don't want to throw out a map out there and give some impression that we might have some confidence level in it, when really you could come up with the same answer with just a coin flip. The team is really, really grateful for the data from the Navajo Nation, and we're working through that data to find a good relationship that can be built into the spring model and hopefully even improve the summer one for the future. Lastly, GrassCast only works in grass-dominated landscapes, so it doesn't work in tree or shrub-dominated landscapes. So if you're in areas or parts of New Mexico or Arizona that are tree-dominated or shrub-dominated, even though maybe there's a GrassCast map, I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in it because it really doesn't work well in those situations. With that aside, now we understand the gray. All right, let's talk about the legend. So these maps are telling you what the model expects the end of season production to be compared to the long-term 36-year average vegetative production. Red and yellow is below average production. The green hues are near average, so plus or minus 5%. And the blue hues are above average, so expecting that there'll be above average production for those areas at the end of the growing season. GrassCast is not telling you what's out there now. GrassCast is looking to the end of the year to help anticipate just how much production might we expect through the entire season, not what's out there today. So let's take a look at the summer maps. Or no, let's take a look at the map and walk through the process of understanding. So you can see a black square box there in San Miguel County, New Mexico. On the left-hand side is the above normal precipitation scenario. In the middle is the near normal precipitation scenario. And on the right-hand side, below normal precipitation scenario. So we'll start on the optimistic side, May 3rd. What did we see? Well, the GrassCast expected that most of that box in there would be a green color. And if we look at the legend, we can see that light green says that correlates to 5% more or less pounds per acre. So more or less right about average production if there was above normal precipitation. We'll move to the middle. If there was near normal precipitation, we can see that box turns mostly yellow. If we look at the legend, we can see the legend correlates to 5 to 15% less pounds per acre than the long-term average. And on the right-hand side, spigot shuts off, which unfortunately is what you experienced. Below normal precipitation, GrassCast expected a 15 to 30% less pounds per acre than the long-term average. All right, spring is in the books, spring is done. Let's see what the summer maps are looking like. Oh, here's the summer map, came out June 28th last week. We create new maps every 2 weeks, so there'll be a new map coming out next week on Thursday. We're gonna look at Apache County in Arizona. On the left-hand side, above normal precipitation, we can see the color is mostly a kind of a medium blue. If we refer to the legend, we see that we expect 15 to 30% more pounds per acre than the long-term average if there's an above normal precipitation for the rest of the summer. In the middle, near normal precipitation, the box turns a light blue. And we look at the legend that's telling us that we expect 5 to 15% more pounds per acre than the long-term average. But we know drought likes to come along. So let's look at the below normal scenario. The box turns mostly yellow. Again, if we refer to the legend, it tells us we expect 5 to 15% less pounds per acre than the long-term average. Okay, that's great. We have this range, but how do we know which one to kind of put our stock into? Which one should we be leaning towards? The way these maps are made is we take the last 36 years and we stack them wettest to driest. Then we take the top 12 wettest years, smash it all together to create an above normal precipitation scenario. We take the bottom 12 years, smash them all together to create a below normal precipitation scenario. And those middle 12 years, they create the near normal precipitation scenario. So you can kind of think to yourself, given the precipitation patterns that you've experienced, given where the rangeland is right now, given what's happened so far, what's the likelihood that you could end up in one of the 12 wettest years of the last 36? What's the likelihood you could end up in one of the 12 driest years of the last 36? Sometimes you can have a pretty strong feeling about which way you're headed. And sometimes it's just too early to say. And in this case, it might just be too early to say. If we have a place in Apache County, we might like to know, especially like for the below normal scenario, well, am I sitting in that green area, or am I sitting in that yellow area? Or it looks like there's an orange box in there. Am I bad enough to be in that orange box? Unfortunate enough to be in that orange box? Well, you can zoom in on GrassCast. GrassCast is actually created, the forecast is created on 6 mile by 6 mile grids. So you can zoom in as close as that if you want to, though all you just see is a big blob of color on top of a grayed out aerial photo. So you can use the magnifying glass to type in a county or town name. Just beware the GrassCast is automatically going to select the geographical center of that county. And given the size of our counties, that may not be anywhere close to where you want to be. I suggest you use the plus and minus signs. It's common in a zoom feature to zoom in and out until you find the area that you want. And then just click, and this little pop-up box will show, and it tells you more information about that particular grid cell. So the maps are arranged just like we've seen before, with above normal precipitation on the left, gradating down to below normal precipitation on the right. So let's take a look and see what it says for this grid cell I selected. So it's saying above normal precipitation, the production is expected to be 22% more than the area's long-term average. Well, hey, that's pretty great. How is this map made? Well, we've added that information into this pop-up box now. So it's telling you since June 1st, because remember there's a summer growing season and we started hard over again on June 1st. So since June 1st, this particular grid cell, GrassCast believes, has received 1.2 inches, and that the average is 0.24, just under a quarter of an inch. So that grid cell, GrassCast believe, has had really great moisture so far in June. The next piece of really important information is down just a little bit. This map is assuming 5 and just a little over a half, 5.67 more inches of rain for the rest of the growing season. That's what's been put into the model to build this prediction or forecast. All right, let's not be quite so optimistic. Let's look at the near normal production. What do we expect there? Well, for this grid cell, we can see it's a light blue, and it's 10% more is what GrassCast is expecting for that particular grid cell, 10% more production than the area's long-term average. That grid cell still has received 1.2 inches, the model believes, out of an average of 0.24 inches by this time of year, the model believes. The model's adding in another 4.15 inches of rain for the rest of the growing season to create the prediction for the near normal forecast. What if the spigot shuts off? What happens then? Well, GrassCast is suggesting that for this grid cell, it would be wise to expect a reduction of 9% less production than the area's long-term average. We've still received the same amount of moisture and we still have the same long-term average, but the map is now built on 2.4 more inches of rain for the rest of the growing season. Well, 2 of the 3 maps look pretty darn optimistic. And actually, given what happened this spring, the -9, we'd take -9%, right? That's still way better than what happened this spring. So does this mean then if I'm this landowner in this grid cell that I could go buy some more animals or at least keep the ones I have? Well, not necessarily. Let's come back to that idea in just a moment. If there's anyone on here from Eastern New Mexico, or if you're in the GrassCast website and you're poking around, you might notice that, wait a minute, Eastern New Mexico gets 2 sets of forecasts. They get one with the Great Plains and they get one with the Southwest, but the forecasts don't look anything alike. Well, that's because the Great Plains is built on kind of a more traditional growing season, a continuous one that starts in March or April and runs through the summer into the fall. One continuous growing season. The Southwest, as I explained at the beginning, is built on 2 distinct and very separate growing seasons. A spring growing season that stops the end of May, and then a summer growing season that begins in June and runs through the rest of the summer. So it has 2 different maps because the Great Plains maps is built on this idea that the growing season started, we're already halfway-ish through. A lot of the trajectory has already been set, and it's pretty hard to change that truck because it's been gone down the road too far. Whereas on the Southwest, we're just at the beginning of the growing season. So there's still a lot of room for things to change, positive or negative. So I hope that explains why we have the 2 maps. So you as a landowner or a grazer, if you're in Eastern New Mexico, you have to decide, well, do I have a continuous growing season? Starts in the spring with those early season grasses, blends into the summer grasses. And if we have a great fall, those early spring grasses might green back up again. Or do I have 2 distinct and very separate growing seasons where I have grasses that grow, they definitely stop, and then we start a new growing season for the summer? All right, back to that question that came up at the Zoom map about stock numbers. Can I keep my stock? Can I buy some more? There are a lot of great tools out there that can help us make decisions. So we recommend that you not put all your eggs into one GrassCast map basket. The GrassCast maps come out every 2 weeks, so watch the trend in all 3 maps. Remember, this is just the second map for the summer. And even though precipitation's been pretty good, at least in the grid cell that I clicked, has your precipitation been similar to the assumption that GrassCast is making? Will more rain fix a drought situation if you're in one? And if your conditions are currently good, or at least acceptable, will less rain put you into a drought situation? Watch the drought monitor, which reflects the past and current climate conditions, precipitation, temperature, evaporation, stream flow, etc. We heard about the drought monitor last week. The authors actually use over 100 different maps and pieces of data to put the drought monitor maps together. So there's a lot of information going into it, and rangeland is not the driving force behind drought monitor. Lots of people use the drought monitor, although USDA uses it the most. It doesn't reflect the lingering effects of drought on the range. A severe drought one year impacts grass growth the next year, even if the rains that following year are terrific. I like to think of drought monitor as most helpful for grazers on the front end of drought, seeing drought develop, seeing drought come along, rather than seeing it fade away, because the impacts of drought carry long past when the rains start to happen. There's also another remote sensing device site called VegDry. It's a weekly look at vegetation stress, how green or dry is the vegetation at the time of the satellite photo. It can help you get the bigger picture of what's going on in the area. And it helps you also get past that intoxicating kind of effect that green has on us. Oh, grass is green, so it's all terrific. And this VegDry helps us to see that maybe it's not as green as it looks like to us standing on the ground. Green, by the way, tells you that grass is photosynthesizing. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's growing. Grass can be green and it can sit there at the same height for weeks or months at a time if it's getting just enough moisture to keep it alive, to keep it from going dormant, but not, conditions aren't good enough for it to actually start putting on growth. There's many other tools out there that you might find helpful. There's a lot of remote sensing and computer-based models out there now. If you're interested in those types of things, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to point you in the direction of some tools that you might find interesting if that's something that you like. But none of these tools should override your local weather data and your experience. You've still got to use your on-the-land monitoring and observations and constantly be analyzing what happened last year or last month or even last week. And how has that affected the rangeland? And what are you going to do about it? If you're using a rotational strategy, how's it working out? Are you able to stay as long as you thought you would and leave the amount of grass that you want to? Or are you having to move out early? Or on the better side, are you able to stay longer than you expected and still have ample forage left behind? Combine all of these tools together to help you see what might be coming. As much as we want you to use GrassCast, we do not want you to misuse GrassCast. Sources, combining sources like Drought Monitor, GrassCast, FedgeDry, they can all help on a broad scale, but you have got to spend time out on the range, really looking at what's going on. GrassCast and all these other tools is not a substitute for going to your pastures. You know, driving by at 50 miles an hour, 55, 60, looking out the side window, how do things look out there? Or even when you're just driving out on the range, checking salt and mineral, checking on your water, checking the health of your rangeland or of your cattle. You've got to get out of your vehicle, off your four-wheeler, off your horse, and get your boots and your eyes on the ground. You've got to walk the range so you can really see what's happening with the grass. And here's, I'll illustrate why. Here's two pictures. They're the same place. This first picture, we're looking across, it's the end of May, looks pretty dandy, doesn't it? Especially if you consider that it ended the year last year 50% behind on precipitation, and it's already 70% of normal at this point. But in the middle of that view shot, or in the middle of the top picture, you walk out there and look down, you get a whole different view, don't you? That's my pickup key there, just to the left and up of center for scale. So you can see when you're looking down, it doesn't look the same as when you're looking across. GrassCast does not know the difference between desirable and undesirable plants. It doesn't know if you have annuals or perennials, if you have weeds out there, if they're noxious or not. So you've got to know what's out there and adjust those GrassCast estimates accordingly. GrassCast sees the world in 6 mile by 6 mile squares. It doesn't know if your pasture got more or less moisture. It doesn't know if it's more or less vulnerable to drought than your neighbors. It doesn't know the grazing history out there. GrassCast doesn't know if you even have vegetation out there. Maybe it all blew away in the drought or wind last year, winter, this spring. It doesn't know if the grass that's out there is 2 inches tall or 6 inches tall. It doesn't know how much rain your pasture got compared to the weather stations it's triangulating off of to create the forecast for your particular grid cell. And it doesn't know if the rain that fell soaked in, if it ran off, or if it evaporated up into the air. Therefore, GrassCast alone or any of these remote sensing devices cannot be used by federal or private landowners to make management decisions. They cannot be used for setting stocking levels, for determining when the cattle and livestock can go on or when they have to come off the range. They are not range monitoring devices, and GrassCast should not be used for documenting grazing losses. GrassCast is a total production estimate, not a grazing estimate. And the two are not the same. And let me illustrate that. So let's say that in an average year, your rangeland is expected to grow 1,000 pounds per acre. If you looked at it over the last 36 years, that would be the average of the production out there. It's commonly believed and been proven through research that you need to leave at least half of what's grown out there to maintain the health of the rangeland. Maintain health of the plants, maintain the integrity of the rangeland, make sure that it's well armored and ready to take advantage of those good years and able to survive the poor years. So if we have 1,000 pounds out there, we need to leave 500 pounds in place to maintain that integrity of the rangeland. So that means you can take half. Yeah, but half of that's going to get trampled. They're going to get urinated on, defecated on, otherwise rendered useless. So actually, in the end, it's a quarter of the total production that goes to feed the animal. So 250 pounds for a conservative estimate. So if your average production is 1,000 pounds, you're really only putting a quarter of that into the gut of the animal, 250 pounds. All right, let's say GrassCast projects a 30% production loss, 30% less production than the long-term average. Well, that means we have 700 pounds per acre. But now stop and think, and this is something that even those of us that are in advising situation don't think about enough. If a healthy rangeland needs 500 pounds to maintain its integrity, to keep those plants well rooted and well prepared for drought and able to take advantage of good years, don't drought stressed rangelands still need that 500 pounds to be in place to keep them well armored and ready to survive the drought? That means there's only 200 pounds left to take. Half of that's still going to get trampled, urinated on, defecated on, otherwise rendered unusable. So that means 100 pounds is allocated to feed the animal. And 100 pounds versus 250 pounds, I don't have to tell you, is not the same thing. And it's actually a 60% grazing loss, which is far more severe than the GrassCast projection of a 30% total production loss. How do we find some of these other tools? Well, the National Drought Mitigation Center posted this website last spring. It's called the Ranch Drought Monitoring Dashboard. It's a little tough to find just typing it into Google or to your favorite search engine. So I put the address up here in bold so that you can see it. Take a screenshot, use your phone and take a picture of it, because you really need to type in that address just like it is to find it. It's a little hard to find off of the drought website itself, off the NDMC website itself. The dashboard is really neat though. It features the latest data on drought and precipitation conditions. It has the outlooks, on the ground reports, vegetative stress, forage productivity, and more, all organized around key questions. The key questions are there in the green. For example, what is my current drought situation? Or what can I expect for forage production this year? I bet you know where that one's going to take you. Or what are my options for drought management? You click on any of those, it'll scream you down to the part of the webpage that addresses those questions with links. Well, actually not with links, but with the actual information right there and some links, resources that can be displayed on a US map that you can put together and help provide a clear picture of current drought conditions and expectations. There's so much information out there, and it's really challenging sometimes to figure out what you're supposed to do with all of it. So the Drought Mitigation Center, National Drought Mitigation Center built this page to try and organize it around the questions that ranchers are asking during drought and make it easier to find the information you're looking for to help you make decisions. Right now, GrassCast uses the National Weather Service co-op stations, but it's hoped that someday in the not too distant future, we'll be able to use data from CoCoRaHS, or the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Study. CoCoRaHS was born out of a flood in the 1990s in Fort Collins in Colorado, but it's now blossomed. It covers all the United States. It reaches even into Canada and to some of the Caribbean islands. It's really easy to sign up. Go to the website. There's no charge. You do need to have the rain gauge that's pictured there on the left. You can buy it off of the website. There's a link on the website to where you can buy it. It runs about $30, but you can contact the Southwest Climate Hub as well to see if they still have some rain gauges that you might be able to pick up. You can see there's great clusters of reports there in some areas in New Mexico and Arizona, but there's also an awful lot of areas that don't have anybody reporting. And it's really important to get those numbers. Extra important to report those days when you don't get anything, zip, nada, nothing for precipitation, because the drought monitor authors are looking at CoCoRaHS, and other people, Weather Service and other agencies are looking at CoCoRaHS to see what's been happening to help them make decisions about what they want to do in a particular area and help them identify when drought actually began. CoCoRaHS observers can also submit condition reports. It's kind of similar to the CMOR that we heard about a couple weeks ago. It's not quite as detailed though. You use a radio button to click what condition you're in, report date, the condition you're in, and then there's just a text box there that type in what information you want to share. So whereas CMOR prompts you for a lot of particular information, you can just willy-nilly put it into this text box for people to read. You might like this better. You cannot put up pictures on CoCoRaHS, but it is a one-stop place where you can report your precipitation and report conditions, and people will still see it if you would like to participate in this kind of citizen weather science opportunity. To learn more about GrassCast, I invite you to go to our website, grasscast.unl.edu, or just type GrassCast into your favorite web browser. We do have an introductory video there. It's a short little video explaining the basics of GrassCast, and we just updated it to include our Southwest maps. We also have a tutorial on how to read the maps in case I've left you confused or you forget in a couple days what exactly it is I said. You can go there and read the tutorials. If you'd like to understand more in depth how GrassCast works, you go to the science webinars, and there's some really great explanations by Danelle Peck, the Climate Hub director, on how GrassCast works, how the model works, and how it puts information together to create the forecast. If you want to zoom in and see what the forecast is for your particular area, it's the second box there on the left-hand side, GrassCast zoomable maps. And if you just want to see, well, what has GrassCast said in the past, whether it's the first map in June, or if you want to see the spring maps, or maybe you even want to go back a year or two and see what GrassCast was predicting for those years, you can go take a look and help you decide how well is GrassCast working for your area. So come check us out, grasscast.unl.edu. This is the landing page. It does bring up the Great Plains maps because that's covering a bigger area, but just click on the Southwest radio button there. It'll pop up the maps for you. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, please reach out to us and let us know. We'd like to know how GrassCast works for you. What is there that we could do to make the website easier to navigate? What information are you looking for that you didn't find? We're hoping to do some rebuild of the website over this winter during the down season. So we'd like to know what you think of GrassCast and how well it's worked for you. And certainly if the forecasts were way off, particularly as we get to the end of the year and we issue that final forecast, we'd like to know, man, if it was just wrong, we want to know so we can dig into that and figure out what happened. And I thank you so much for your time and for inviting GrassCast to be part of this webinar series. And I'd love to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Julie. If you guys have any questions, you can go ahead and raise your hand or unmute yourself. So in the meantime, how can, producers get involved, with CoCoRaHS and CMOR? You create an account and you report, what's in your local area, the rainfall, and also how it looks around you. How can producers assist with GrassCast?
I will say these are really good rain gauges. They're the best rain gauge you can get without having the official Weather Service rain gauge. They did a lot of studies with different types of rain gauges, and this was the one that they found to most closely or to give the closest results to their big fancy rain gauges that they have out on their weather stations. So it is a good rain gauge. I've had mine for a number of years now. Mine's been lucky. It's never been through a 4-inch hailstorm. So I think that would probably do the gauge in, but they do last a very long time. And they have the inner tube, which just holds an inch, but then there's an outer tube. So between the two, you can hold up to about 11 inches of rain in there. If this is going to be a rain gauge or in a site where you won't get to very often, that funnel really reduces the evaporation by quite a lot. But you could put a little bit of vegetable oil in there to just help reduce the evaporation even more. But I had to be gone for about 6 weeks this spring, and we had unfortunately about the only rain that we've had in the northeast corner of Colorado, and I lost 0.05 of an inch out of that inner tube. And I know that because there was water in the outside tube where the inner tube had overflowed into the outside tube, but the water was down 0.05 from that overflow spout. So it's a very good gauge. Even if you don't want to report to CoCoRaHS, you can just go to the website and say, sign me up, and you'll get the link without actually having to sign up. You can get the link to get the rain gauge. And I did notice in the chat, someone bought theirs off of Amazon for about $45. So.
Okay, great. And all, the information that you receive, you do work with the Drought Mitigation Center. Correct?
Can you repeat the question? I don't quite understand, Helena.
Okay. No, this is Jessie.
Jessie,
the
sorry.
Information, you're fine. With your maps that are on GrassCast, you get the precipitation from the Drought Mitigation Center or CoCoRaHS or both. That part was unclear on my part.
Okay, so GrassCast gets its precipitation information from the National Weather Service station. So not from the Drought Mitigation Center. Now you can find the GrassCast maps on the Drought Mitigation Center site, that dashboard that I shared. If you want to go there, they do have the GrassCast maps there as well. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. It does answer the question. And then also, your maps are updated weekly?
Every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks. So the last map came out June 28th. So there'll be another map. I'm looking at my calendar. It'll come out on the 13th or 14th of July. So next week on Wednesday or Thursday.
Hi, this is Marge, Julie.
Yeah, Marge.
Marge Lantana. I'm just so amazed on the presentation you provided for us this evening, and I will definitely utilize that GrassCast information. And I do have that CoCoRaHS installed at my ranch. And here back at home, where we pasture our cattle, we're like probably 15 miles. So there's a huge difference of collection of precipitation this past several weeks. So I'm always quite concerned why the Navajo Nation does not have a weather station. So I think it will have to start with us to make a proposal to our councilmen and towards the Navajo Nation to start constructing or proposing for a weather station. So I'm just thinking that first map that you showed us has a great spot that may have been caused because we don't have the weather station, but we are utilizing our own cocoa rods to measure our precipitation. So we're very quite happy with the rainfall this past several weeks. And I think overall, the cumulative, we probably got maybe 2 inches of rainfall. So each day we've been getting like a sixth of an inch or almost an inch. So, but your presentation is very helpful, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Marge. I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad to hear that you're getting rain. So that's super.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Marge, for your question. If you guys have noticed, I launched the poll. You know, if you guys can get that filled out and get it back to us, that helps us a lot. Thank you, Julie, and thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I'm just going over the chat box to make sure. Okay, we got all of the questions answered. Does anyone else have any questions for Julie? Very great presentation. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give everybody a couple of minutes to get the poll filled out. And thank you again, Julie, for your presentation. It's very informative and interesting. This is the first time that I have heard of GrassCast, aside from, you know, planning this event. And so, you know, it does help if you have some maps to look at, you know, to compare good years to your current situation and what could happen. And so, especially with range managers and, you know, ranchers across the Navajo Nation, gives us a better idea of what to look forward to, plan ahead, and I guess roll with the punches. There is one more comment. Okay, great presentation. So with that, thank you, Julie, and thank you everybody for joining us this evening. Join us next week. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And I just want to say that between myself and Dave Dubois, we do provide COCORA's trainings. And here at the Southwest, we do have some gauges. So if you're interested, right there's my email, let me know. And we can set it up through Zoom as well. And I just let Tiara know that I'll be traveling back to Navajo Nation this week. So I don't know, maybe I'll be able to run up a gauge that way. Thanks.
All right,
Helena,
thanks, Helena. So you guys, go ahead.
Helena, Helena, Navajo Nation tribal ranchers are meeting at Bernalillo this Friday. I don't know if you can get a hold of Ivan Vicente to do a quick presentation, but I think their agenda is full, but it won't hurt to call them. Just information.
And where was the meeting going to be at?
It's going to be at Bernalillo, New Mexico, by Navajo Nation Tribal Ranchers Office, Ivan Vicente. It's this Friday.
It's kind of cutting it short. I don't know if I'll be able to, but definitely for a future one, I am available.
Yeah, just give them a call. Their agenda might be full.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Jesse,
I do have a question. Go ahead.
Can you
Go
give
ahead.
me forward the survey form to me again? For some reason, it just froze on me.
Okay, all right, we could do that. Okay, so there is a question in the chat box. Is Hoover Dam closed? I heard there was a water problem. It's low. I was out there in June. So Julie, do you know?
I don't have any idea. I do know all the dams
Okay.
are very low. but yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Okay, well, I think that concludes our Q&A session and our evening session. And thank you again, Julie. Thank you, everybody. Join us next week on July 12th. We will have Keith Howard from the Navajo Nation Fish and Wildlife Program provide a presentation on Navajo climate change adaptation. So that should be interesting. Okay, another comment, would like more training on water related implementations and drought as well. Okay. Okay, thank you, Loretta. Okay, I believe that's it, and everyone have a great evening, and we shall talk next week.